The morning sun rose quietly over the skyline, soft rays spilling across the damp streets that had endured a night of chaos. For the first time in months, the city felt still, like it was holding its breath. The CEO stood by his window, coffee untouched, watching the reflection of his tower shimmer in a puddle below. It no longer felt like a monument of success. It was a reminder of greed, blindness, and the people who had suffered in silence beneath its glass floors. He turned away, glancing at the small box on his desk. Inside lay the cracked flash drive and Emma's note. Her words echoed again in his mind, some truths destroy. Others rebuild. He smiled faintly. It was time to rebuild. By the end of the week, he made the announcement himself. The company would be dissolved. All remaining assets would be used to create a new foundation, one dedicated to protecting workers, not exploiting them. A new start, born from the ruins of his own mistakes. The news spread fast, but the reaction was different this time. There was no outrage. No fury. Only quiet respect, and a strange sense of hope. In a small cafe on the edge of the city, a woman in a worn jacket watched his press conference on an old television. Her lips curved into a soft, knowing smile. She picked up her bag, left a generous tip on the counter, and stepped outside into the sunlight. The symbol, the eye surrounded by light, was stitched on the sleeve of her coat. As she disappeared into the crowd, her voice lingered in the air, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. Sometimes, the truth is not the end, it is where everything truly begins. And somewhere far above, the morning light touched the tallest window of the CEO's former tower. Now empty, but no longer hollow. The city moved on. The rain poured down in thin silver lines, washing the streets clean of noise. A man in a dark coat stepped out of a black car, his hat pulled low against the storm. The smell of wet asphalt mixed with the faint aroma of garlic bread drifting from the corner restaurant. He looked up at the sign, Luciano's Trattoria. His restaurant. But tonight, he was not coming as the owner. He was coming as someone else. Inside, the warmth hit him like a soft wave. The place was alive with chatter, forks clinking against plates, and jazz whispering through the speakers. He adjusted his glasses, scanned the room, and took a quiet seat near the kitchen door. No one recognized him. That was the point. A waitress approached. Her name tag read Emma. Her eyes were red-rimmed, the faint shimmer of tears still clinging to her lashes. "Good evening, sir," she said softly, forcing a smile. "Can I get you something to drink?" He nodded, watching her carefully. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrote on her pad. Her apron was stained, and her steps looked heavier than they should have. She disappeared toward the counter, where the manager barked orders without looking up. The CEO leaned back in his chair. He could hear everything. The clatter of plates, the hiss of the fryer, the tired voice of the dishwasher singing a tune from the radio. But under it all, there was tension, the kind that crept under your skin and stayed there. Emma returned with his drink, her smile breaking for a moment as her eyes filled again. He spoke gently. "Rough night?" Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked toward the kitchen, where the manager's glare burned through the glass. "I am sorry, sir," she whispered. "I will be right back." The air seemed to thicken, pressing down on every breath. Emma's fingers twisted the edge of her apron, her voice trembling as she continued. He has been taking our tips," she said, her eyes darting toward the manager. "And when I tried to say something, he told me I would be replaced." A sharp gasp rippled through the dining room. The line cooks peeked from behind the kitchen door. The hostess froze mid-step, clutching a menu against her chest. The manager's face turned red, then pale, his mouth opening but no sound escaping. The CEO's expression remained unreadable. He stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking softly on the tiles. "How long has this been happening?" he asked. Emma's voice broke. 4 months. And not just me. Another waitress, a young man from the kitchen, nodded silently. "He said no one would believe us," the boy whispered. The CEO turned his gaze toward the staff, the cooks, the servers, the dishwashers. Their eyes said everything words could not. The manager backed away, his hands raised slightly. "Sir, this is all a misunderstanding," he said quickly. "You know how emotional these employees can be." "Enough." The single word was quiet but cut sharper than any shout. The CEO's tone left no room for excuses. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a small badge on the counter, the company insignia. "I am not a stranger," he said. "I am the man who signs your paycheck." A collective gasp filled the air. The manager stumbled, his face draining of all color. The CEO turned to Emma. "You should have never been made to feel afraid in a place that depends on you," he said softly. Then to the rest of the staff, "Every one of you deserves respect." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but this time, they carried relief. The CEO's calm voice carried across the dining room. "I will get to the bottom of this. Tonight." He gestured toward the door. "Office. Now." The manager hesitated, but one look from the CEO made him move. The two disappeared into the back hallway, leaving the restaurant hushed and trembling. The CEO's grip tightened around the phone. The screen glowed pale against the dim light of the restaurant. He read the message again, slower this time. "Not only this restaurant." The words seemed to echo inside his head. He looked around at the people still clapping, smiling through tears, unaware of what was coming. A chill passed through him, sharper than the rain outside. He slipped the phone back into his coat and forced a faint smile. "Everyone," he said, raising a hand. "Take the rest of the night off. You have all earned it." Cheers erupted again. The relief in their faces felt genuine, raw, human. But behind his steady expression, his thoughts churned. If this corruption was happening in one branch, how deep did it go? How many others were suffering in silence? He walked out into the rain. The wind tore at his coat, the thunder rumbling low like a warning. His driver opened the car door, but he waved him off. He needed air, and answers. He stood under the flickering streetlight, pulling his phone out once more. "Call me," he texted his assistant. Within seconds, the phone rang. "Sir," her voice trembled through the speaker. "We checked the financial logs for the other locations. The same inconsistencies appear in at least 5 of them." His jaw clenched. 5. Each one under different management. "How long?" he asked. "Almost a year," she replied. "Hidden under bonus adjustments and false expense reports." The CEO stood there, rain cascading down his face, his fingers tightening around the flash drive. The streetlight buzzed overhead, flickering like a dying heartbeat. He could feel it, that silent pull of danger, the invisible weight of eyes watching from somewhere unseen. He turned sharply, scanning the empty street. Only the sound of rushing water in the gutters, the hum of a distant car, and the steady rhythm of his own breathing. Whoever that man was, he had disappeared as quickly as he appeared. But his warning lingered like smoke. The CEO exhaled slowly and stepped toward his car. The driver looked startled. "Sir, are you all right?" He nodded, though his jaw was tight. "Just drive," he said quietly. "And take the long way." Inside the car, the hum of the engine drowned out the storm outside. He pulled out his phone again, his hands still damp. A part of him wanted to plug in the flash drive immediately, to see what secrets it held. But another part, the instinct that had built his empire, told him to wait. His assistant's voice echoed in his head. 5 locations. A year of falsified reports. And now, a stranger leaving evidence in the dark. He looked out the window as the city lights streaked by. Restaurants, hotels, franchises, all bearing his name. Each one a promise he had made to himself, to build something honest, something lasting. And now that promise was breaking from within. When the car stopped outside his penthouse, he stepped out without a word. The marble lobby gleamed under sterile lights, too clean, too quiet. He took the private elevator to the top floor, the metal doors closing with a heavy thud. His reflection stared back at him in the mirrored walls, a man who had everything, but suddenly trusted nothing. When the elevator chimed, he walked straight to his study. The city spread out below through the glass, a sea of lights drowned beneath a curtain of rain. He placed the flash drive on the desk, staring at it as if it might move on its own. Then he powered on his laptop. The screen came alive, blue light washing across his face. For a moment, the CEO forgot to breathe. The image on the screen stared back at him, unmistakable. Emma. The waitress from the restaurant. The woman whose tears had seemed so real, whose voice had trembled with fear. He leaned closer, his pulse thudding in his ears. Why was she in his headquarters? How did she have access to his office? And more importantly, why had she left him this evidence? He rewound the footage again, frame by frame. Emma moved carefully in the reflection, her eyes darting toward the door as if afraid of being caught. She filmed in secret, quietly, deliberately. This was no accident. She had known exactly what she was doing. The CEO sat back in his chair, running a hand over his face. The storm outside had calmed, but inside, his thoughts raged louder than ever. He had believed she was a victim, fragile, cornered, desperate. But now she was something else entirely. A witness. Or a player. He grabbed his phone and dialed his assistant. Get me everything on an employee named Emma, waitress, assigned to Luciano's trattoria, he ordered. There was a pause on the other end. Sir, that might be difficult. Why? Because, according to our system, she said slowly, there is no record of an Emma working there. The words hit him like a slap. He stood up abruptly, knocking his chair against the wall. No record? None, sir. No hiring file, no payroll, no ID badge. Nothing. He turned toward the window, the city lights glowing faintly in the fog. Then who was she? He looked back at the paused frame on the screen. Emma's reflection was frozen mid-turn, her eyes glancing directly toward the hidden camera. Almost as if she knew someone, someday, would be watching this. The elevator descended in eerie silence. Only the faint hum of machinery broke the stillness. The CEO's reflection flickered in the metallic walls, a man chasing truth through shadows. When the doors opened, the night air hit him again, cold, sharp, alive with threat. The city streets glistened under the rain. He walked fast, coat whipping behind him, each step echoing against the empty pavement. In the distance, the towering outline of L13 headquarters rose like a monolith, dark against the skyline. Its glass windows reflected the storm, giving it the illusion of a sleeping giant. As he approached, the security lights flickered on, sensing motion. No guards at the gate. No vehicles in the lot. Strange for a building that was supposed to run 24 hours. He scanned his keycard at the entrance. The door slid open without resistance. The lobby was silent. Too silent. He stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of dust and coffee gone cold. Every monitor at the reception desk was dark except one, it glowed dimly, a faint blinking cursor waiting for input. He approached slowly, his shoes squeaking against the polished floor. The screen suddenly flickered. A line of text appeared. You should not have come. He froze. Before he could respond, another line appeared, typing itself in real time. They know you are here. His pulse spiked. He looked around, the lobby cameras above him, the dark corners where shadows pooled. Someone was watching. The blackout swallowed everything. Total darkness. Not a flicker of light remained, only the shrill wail of alarms reverberating through the steel corridors. The CEO froze, his breath quick and shallow. The faint hum of servers had stopped. The whole system, dead. He reached out blindly, his hand brushing against a cold wall. Somewhere ahead, footsteps pounded, hurried, chaotic, echoing between alarms. Emma. She was still running. Then came another sound. A metallic click. The CFO's voice cut through the dark like a blade. You should have left this alone. The CEO ducked behind a row of machines, his pulse hammering in his ears. His eyes strained, searching for movement in the faint emergency glow now flickering back to life. Some of the monitors blinked on again, but the feed was distorted, static lines, scrambled images. In one of them, a shape appeared, Emma, sprinting down a maintenance tunnel, clutching her phone. Security breach detected, a robotic voice announced overhead. Lockdown protocol engaged. Steel doors began slamming shut, one after another, sealing the lower levels. Emma was running out of time, and so was he. The CEO darted toward a nearby panel, yanking it open. A mass of wire spilled out, tangled like veins. He ripped the emergency lever down, a single override meant for fire drills. The corridor lights flickered on fully, revealing the CFO a few meters away, holding something in his hand. A gun. The CEO froze. "So this is how far it goes," he said quietly. The CFO smirked, raising the weapon with casual precision. "This is how far it always went. You built an empire, but you never saw what was underneath it. You thought you could control it, but it started controlling you long ago." The CEO leaned against the mirrored wall, breathing hard. Blood from his arm smeared across his sleeve, the sting of the wound sharp and grounding. He could still hear the faint echo of Emma's broadcast looping somewhere in the building, her voice steady, unshaken, fearless. When the elevator doors opened, the air hit different. Cooler. Heavy with the scent of ozone and rain. Outside, flashing blue and red lights painted the entrance in chaotic color. Police. Reporters. Dozens of cameras already waiting. He stepped forward, coat soaked, eyes hollow from exhaustion. The moment he emerged, voices erupted. Questions flew like arrows. Is it true your company was running illegal surveillance? Who was behind Project Echo? The morning sun rose quietly over the skyline, soft rays spilling across the damp streets that had endured a night of chaos. For the first time in months, the city felt still, like it was holding its breath. The CEO stood by his window, coffee untouched, watching the reflection of his tower shimmer in a puddle below. It no longer felt like a monument of success. It was a reminder of greed, blindness, and the people who had suffered in silence beneath its glass floors. He turned away, glancing at the small box on his desk. Inside lay the cracked flash drive and Emma's note. Her words echoed again in his mind, some truths destroy. Others rebuild. He smiled faintly. It was time to rebuild. By the end of the week, he made the announcement himself. The company would be dissolved. All remaining assets would be used to create a new foundation, one dedicated to protecting workers, not exploiting them. A new start, born from the ruins of his own mistakes. The news spread fast, but the reaction was different this time. There was no outrage. No fury. Only quiet respect, and a strange sense of hope. In a small cafe on the edge of the city, a woman in a worn jacket watched his press conference on an old television. Her lips curved into a soft, knowing smile. She picked up her bag, left a generous tip on the counter, and stepped outside into the sunlight. The symbol, the eye surrounded by light, was stitched on the sleeve of her coat. As she disappeared into the crowd, her voice lingered in the air, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. Sometimes, the truth is not the end, it is where everything truly begins. And somewhere far above, the morning light touched the tallest window of the CEO's former tower. Now empty, but no longer hollow. The city moved on. The storm had passed. And from its silence, something honest began to grow.